Let's run through these practice problems. Hopefully then you can get another view of how things are supposed to work out. First, let's identify our common denominator. And in these first two, it's actually a little bit trickier. So I need a number that's divisible by 3 and 4 and v. I hope I can convince you that that's going to end up being a 12v. So here we're going to multiply by 4 bottom and top. And here we're going to multiply by 3 bottom and top. So 20 over 12v plus 9 over 12v is just 29 over 12v. And then make sure that we didn't divide by 0. So we're going to add the restriction that v not equal to 0. You will notice that on your practice sheet, it doesn't list the restrictions. I would still like you to be able to, because it does matter here as well, just like it did with multiplying and dividing. Next up, mixing the x's and the y's together. So what do we need? For the least common denominator, I need a number divisible by 2 and 3. Well, that's got to be 6. X and x squared, we're going to need the higher exponent, and this has a y squared that doesn't have any y's, so we need a y squared. So on this first one, what am I missing? I need a factor of 3 and x. So times 3x, top and bottom. And then over here, what are we missing? A 2y squared, top and bottom. Okay, so what I have is 15xy over 6x squared y squared minus, now I'm going to distribute this here. So 2y squared times x is 2xy squared minus 4y to the third all over that same common denominator of 6x squared y squared. All right, I'm going to change my subtraction to addition of the opposites. And now let's put everything together. Now the order of these, when it's a mixture of x and y, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to put, I think, my 4y to the third first, and then my minus 2xy squared, and then my plus 15xy all over the common denominator of 6x squared y squared, with the note that, hey, just make sure that your x isn't 0, and just also make sure that your y isn't 0. Next up, believe it or not, they actually get a little simpler when you don't have those binomial denominators. When we have these binomial denominators, it's usually easier to find that LCD because I just need, well, I need an n minus 6 and an n minus 3. So there it is. That means we got to multiply by n minus 3, top and bottom here in this first one. Forgive me for writing that small, but there wasn't a lot of space. And then in the second one, we just need the n minus 6 top and bottom. Let's do then two things. We're going to distribute, so 6n minus 18 over this LCD minus, distribute the 4, 4n minus 24 over. All right, it's a subtraction, so let's change to addition of the opposites. I'll tell you what, I'm going to rewrite that 4. That's not the best 4 I've ever made. And so here we go. 6n plus negative 4n, that's just 2n. Negative 18 plus 24 is 6. And that's over the common denominator of n minus 6, n minus 3. Just making a note, we don't want to accidentally divide by 0, so make sure you don't put a 3 or a 6 in for the n. So the reduced expression, together with the restrictions, there we are. Next up, on this one, that least common denominator, it's going to need a factor of x plus 1 and a factor of 2x plus 5. So we need that 2x plus 5, bottom and top. And forgive me, there's just not enough space, so I'm going to write it slightly below, but it's really this times that. And then over here, we need that factor of x plus 1, bottom and top. Okay, let's distribute. So 5 times 2x, 5 times 5. And then down below, the x plus 1, 2x plus 5. Now for the second one, I think I went a little too far. So 2x times x would be 2x squared. 2x times 1 is 2x, all over this common denominator. So put it all together. We're going to have a 2x squared. 10x plus 2x would be 12x's. And the plus 25. And that's all over the common denominator. Tell you what, we're going to rewrite that 25 as well, because it looked a little nasty. An x plus 1 and a 2x plus 5. And then just a quick list of restrictions. Hey, make sure that your x isn't -1. Make sure your x isn't -5/2. And then we should be good to go. Couple more. Now on this one, what's our LCD going to be? Just for space reasons, I'm going to put it down here. Well, I'm going to need a 3. Going to need an n. Going to need a 5n minus 4. So you've got to have at least all the factors of each denominator. But I also need a 3, but wait a minute. 3 is already listed. You don't need to list 3 again. This is our least common denominator. So this first one doesn't need to change at all. But the second one, we've got to multiply by an n and a 5n minus 4. So the first stays the same. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to take this back a step, because I didn't do a check that we're supposed to do, yeah? I should have checked to see, can I do any reducing first? This n and that n can reduce. That is going to make our overall work simpler in the long run if we do that now. So I should have caught that earlier. I hope you caught it. If we then do this work, it doesn't change anything. Our LCD looks pretty much the same, except it's not going to have that factor of n in it. So it'll just have the 3 and the 5n minus 4. All right, that's going to work out a little nicer. Just keeps things smaller. We won't have that factor of n floating around. So what we have, first fraction doesn't need to change. It is still just 5/3, parentheses 5n minus 4. Here, distribute the 4, 20n minus 16 over this same common denominator. So put that all together. 5 plus -16 is -11, with the 20n over our common denominator. And then a note on the restriction that, hey, n cannot be, I'm going to go back to our original problem, can't be 0, and can't be 4/5. So reduced combined expression together with your restrictions. And there we go. Next up. For this one, let's do that same check. Those can reduce to 1s. That'll make our lives a little bit easier. So the least common denominator, it's got to have a factor of a minus 6. It also has to have a factor of a plus 2. All right, so in the first one here, we just need the a plus 2 top and bottom. And forgive me for not having enough space. And over here, we need the a minus 6 top and bottom. Let's distribute 4 times a, 4 times 2, over this common denominator. And then here, we'll have on the top just the a minus 6, because a minus 6 times 1. And on the bottom, the a minus 6, a plus 2. Let's change it to, because it's a subtraction, addition of the opposites. And then put it all together. Get a little more space. So what are we going to have? 4a plus -a is 3a. 8 plus 6 is 14. And that's over our common denominator of a minus 6, a plus 2. with the restriction that, hey, I don't want to divide by 0 because everybody ends up dead in that black hole that is created when nature tries to divide by 0. All right, here's where we end up. So you won't hear me say this is easy, but it is manageable if you keep track of things. Check for reducing first, find what that common denominator should be, make denominators match, and combine your like terms, making sure that for subtractions you switch to addition of the opposites.